Ever thought about being a king today? What's it really like to live in a palace and run a country? Let's take a look at King Harald V of Norway. He's not your average ruler. This guy is shaking things up and showing us a whole new way to be royal. A king who sails in the Olympics, speaks out on climate change, and still finds time to binge watch Netflix. Intrigued? You should be. King Harald isn't your average ruler, and his life is anything but ordinary. Let's start at the beginning. Born on February 21st, 1937, Harald was just a little prince with big dreams. But life wasn't all fairy tales and rainbows. When he was just 3 years old, Nazi Germany invaded Norway, forcing Harald and his family to flee. But Harald wasn't going to let a little thing like World War II keep him down. After the war, he returned to Norway and set about becoming the kind of prince people could look up to. He hit the books hard, studying history, economics, and politics at Oxford University. But here's where things get really interesting. In 1968, Harald fell head over heels in love with a commoner named Sonja Haraldson. Scandalous, right? The old school royals were not happy. They thought a future king should marry a blue-blooded princess, not some regular girl off the street. But Harald wasn't having any of that nonsense. He stood his ground and basically told everyone, it's Sonja or no one. That's right, he threatened to never marry if he couldn't be with Sonja. Talk about romantic. Eventually, the king, Harald's dad, gave in, and Harald and Sonja tied the knot in a fairy tale wedding. Fast forward to 1991, and Harald finally got the top job, King of Norway. But this wasn't going to be your typical monarchy. Oh no, Harald had plans to shake things up and bring the royal family into the modern age. Now you might be thinking, okay, he's a king. He probably spends all day sitting on a golden throne eating caviar and bossing people around. Wrong. Harald's day-to-day life is way more interesting than that. First off, let's talk about his crib. The royal palace in Oslo is Harald's main pad, and it's pretty sweet. We're talking 173 rooms, gorgeous gardens, and some seriously fancy furniture. But get this, Harald doesn't just lounge around in silk pajamas all day, he actually works. A typical day for King Harald starts early. He's up with the sun, ready to tackle his royal duties, but what does a modern king actually do? Well, it's a mix of old school royal stuff and new age leadership. In the morning, he might meet with the prime minister to discuss important state matters. Boring, right? Wrong. Harald isn't just a figurehead. He's got real power and isn't afraid to use it. He can veto laws, though he's never done it, and he's the guy who officially appoints the government. But it's not all serious business. Harald knows how to have fun too. In the afternoon, you might find him sailing on his royal yacht, the Norge. This isn't just any old boat. It's a floating palace, complete with a dining room that can seat 54 people. Fancy! And here's a fun fact. Harald is a huge nature lover. He often goes on hiking trips in the Norwegian wilderness, camping out under the stars. Can you imagine stumbling across the King of Norway roasting marshmallows over a campfire? It could happen.
Vi setter over til reporterne våre ute i Europa. Lea Magnus, hvordan er stemningen i Sverige?
Her er stemningen helt topp, Ingrid, og vi har med oss kronprinsesse Victoria.
Hvorfor kan ikke svenskene gå fortere på ski?
Men nu Magnus, så, ja men ganska bra det i alla fall.
Jo, Maud og Emma, dere har fått med dere selveste kronprins Fredrik av Danmark til en liten prat.
Ja, det har vi. Fredrik, hva synes du er det beste med bestemor og bestefar?
Jeg synes, vi har det altid enormt hyggeligt sammen, og jeg synes, vi griner meget sammen, når vi ses.
Ja, før vi avslutter skal vi en liten quiz, Fredrik. Dejlig norsk laks eller rød pølse fra Danmark?
Og så bliver det en rød pølse.
Now, let's talk about Harald's family. They're not your typical stuffy royals. Harald and Queen Sonja have two kids, Princess Martha Louise and Crown Prince Haakon. Princess Martha Louise is a bit of a rebel. She gave up her Royal Highness title to become a self-proclaimed clairvoyant. That's right, she claims she can talk to angels, not exactly your average princess. Crown Prince Haakon, on the other hand, is next in line for the throne. But he's not just sitting around waiting to be king, he's super active in charity work, especially stuff related to the environment and global development. Plus, he married a single mom, which was pretty controversial at the time. These Norwegian royals sure know how to stir things up. And let's not forget about the grandkids. Harald's got 5 of them, and he's not your typical stuffy grandpa. He's been known to take them on fishing trips and even let them drive the royal golf cart around the palace grounds. Okay, I know what you're thinking. But what about the crown jewels, the fancy cars, the designer clothes? Don't worry, we're getting to the good stuff. First up, the crown. Harald's got a beauty, all gold and studded with precious gems. But here's the kicker. He almost never wears it. It mostly sits in a museum, looking pretty for the tourists. When Harald does need to get fancy for state occasions, he usually just wears a military uniform. Now, let's talk rides. You might expect a king to have a fleet of Rolls-Royces or Bentleys, but Harald, he prefers to keep it low-key. His everyday car is a Tesla Model S. Yep, the King of Norway drives an electric car. How's that for eco-friendly? But don't think Harald's gone completely modest. He's still got some seriously cool royal perks, like his own train. The royal train is used for official tours around Norway, and it's decked out with all the luxuries you'd expect. Think plush sofas, gourmet kitchens, and even a conference room. Talk about traveling in style! And then there's the art collection. The Norwegian royal family owns some seriously valuable pieces, including works by Edvard Munch, the guy who painted The Scream. But Harald doesn't just hoard this stuff for himself. Many of the royal artworks are on display in museums for everyone to enjoy. So we've covered where Harald lives and what he drives. But what does he actually do all day? Being a king in the 21st century is a pretty unique job, and Harald's got his own style of doing things. But Harald's not just focused on Norway, he's a global player too. He goes on state visits to other countries, meeting with presidents and prime ministers. And get this, he speaks fluent English, French, and German. Pretty impressive for a guy who grew up speaking Norwegian.
His Majesty, King Harald V of Norway.
But it's not all work and no play for King Harald. Remember how we mentioned he loves sailing? Well, he's not just a casual sailor, he's competed in the Olympics 3 times. In fact, he was the flag bearer for Norway in the 1964 Tokyo Olympics. How many other kings can say they've done that? The coolest thing about Harald is his progressive views. He's been a strong supporter of LGBTQ+ rights, even giving a speech where he declared that Norwegians are girls who love girls, boys who love boys, and girls and boys who love each other. Pretty bold statement for a king, right? And let's not forget about his feminist cred. Harald's a big believer in gender equality. When his daughter, Princess Martha Louise, was born, he changed the constitution so she could inherit the throne. Before that, only men could be monarchs in Norway. Talk about a royal revolution. So there you have it, the inside scoop on King Harald V of Norway's insane lifestyle. From his eco-friendly car to his Olympic sailing adventures, from his progressive views to his love of camping, Harald's proving that being a king in the 21st century is about way more than just wearing a crown and waving from a balcony. So next time you're dreaming about living like royalty, forget about the stuffy palaces and rigid rules. Take a page out of Harald's book instead. Go sailing, speak up for what you believe in, and maybe try some Norwegian brown cheese. Who knows, you might just end up feeling like the king or queen of your own world.